Be looking at another Geography Now video. This go around, be looking at Austria. Let's get into it.
Also nicht vergessen, wann's nach Österreich kommst, aber wann's Deutsch reden, nennt es nicht Deutsch.
It's time to learn geography now!
Hey peeps, I'm your host Paul Barbato. Okay. Let's dissect the flag. The flag is one of the oldest used flags of Europe. Disputably, legend has it that the flag...
And that's a very simple color scheme. Red on white. That's it. Red, white, red. Okay.
Comes from the siege of... The flag is one of the oldest used flags of Europe. Disputably, legend has it that the flag comes from the siege of Acre after Leopold V came back from battle and removed his belt with his blood-soaked tunic, leaving a red-white banner. Keep in mind that the Austrian flag looks very similar to the flag of Latvia. However, the Latvian flag has unequal-sized bands and is a darker shade of red. Keep in mind, many other countries in the Eastern European region, specifically the Pan-Slavic areas, still retain a part or complete version of the white-red pattern on their flags, like Austria. We'll explain a little bit more about this, but first, let's talk.
Yeah, red and white does seem to be a pretty popular color scheme when it comes to, even if you mix in some other colors, the red and white itself does seem to be pretty popular.
Talk about the borders. In terms of its location, Austria is landlocked, bordered by 8 other countries, don't forget Liechtenstein, in the Central European region, with the Alps dominating 3/4 of the country in the west and in the center. The country is divided into 9 states, although it's kind of funny because the state of Lower Austria is technically a little higher than Upper Austria geographically. The capital and the largest city is Vienna, located on the eastern side of the country, where 1 out of every 8 Austrians can be found. The city is a wonderful assimilation of central...
That's a massive cityscape then, because 1 out of 8 of all Austrians can be found there. That's population size in. It's got to be a lot of, okay. So, which I'm going to guess with the Alps being right there, there's probably a lot of smaller, like tiny, probably 100 people and less type villages and things of that nature. If I had to venture a guess, probably just due to the geographic nature and hardship of probably getting to some of those areas.
Old stone churches, palaces, opera houses, and monuments, as well as modern high-rises, skyscrapers, and business offices. Oh, and there's dozens of castles speckled throughout the entire country. Remember how in the Albania video I told you play that whole find the bunker game? Well, in Austria, it's kind of like find the castle game. As a member of the EU, Austria's borders are pretty open with all of its neighbors, and are pretty much virtually invisible with the exception of the occasional river or mountain blocking the way. The only controversy it really has is in the South Tyrol region, which historically belonged to a number of different kingdoms and empires, but for a long while it belonged to the House of Habsburg, a historically fascinating lineage that would eventually play a pivotal role in providing half of Europe with all of their monarchical lineages. In short, it kind of initially belonged to Austria. However, after the Treaty of Saint-Germain-en-Laye in 1919, the entire southern part of this region was kind of reluctantly given to the Kingdom of Italy. This explains why Austria has a relatively narrow eastern parameter that stretches into the Alps, as the South Tyrol region, which previously gave the country a wider range of dominion, was ceded to Italy.
My question is, what would the language be in that area, since that was historically, is it like a fusion or a mixture, or is it just mostly now Italian?
It was kind of like, okay, Italy, we'll give you this piece of land, but, you know, just a little heads up, pretty much everybody in there is Austrian and they speak German and they kind of want to be part of Austria. But hey, it's all yours. The most confusing part of the region, though, would have to be the Jungholz Enclave. Located right on the border of the Bavarian region of southern Germany, this place only has about 300 people, separated into 4 small towns. This area is strange because it is one of Europe's only 3 quadrupoint borders and is technically joined by Austria by only a small narrow corridor, only a few meters wide, on the top of the adjacent Zugspitze mountain that crosses over into the Austria side. Otherwise, the only way to get into Austria from this region is by driving through Germany. This means that if you don't want to go through Germany to get into Austria from this region, the only way is to literally climb to the top of the Zugspitze mountain to the very point where the 4 borders meet and climb all the way down to the rest of Austria. Since the 19th century, the borders have been literally...
Well, that doesn't sound like it'd be very, that doesn't sound like it'd be the best way of going about that. I guess unless you, like, you know, rock climbing and mountain climbing and stuff like that, it sounds like it'd be a bit frustrating.
Literally marked every single step of the way, and the top has a mark stone that distinguishes the narrow crossing. Believe it or not, this is actually a common hike that a lot of people take, despite the fact that many of them don't even understand the significance of the markers. Speaking of mountains and hikes, let's talk about the physical geography. As mentioned before, about 3/4 of Austria is mountainous, with the Alps dominating the center and western parts of the country. These mountains are the characterizing segments that give Austria its distinct national identity, both historically and culturally. In short, even though the vast majority of people in Austria live in the low-lying plains around the mountains, Austria would not be Austria without the Alps. These mountains can actually be quite quirky, almost with minds of their own. For example, every spring in the Hochschwab Mountains and forests on the east side of the Alps, the snowmelt from the mountains completely engorges the Grüne See, or the Green Lake, engulfing the entire park with trees and benches underneath it. These mountains also provide the perfect setting for Austria's favorite sport, skiing. The problem though is that although these mountains are very beautiful, they do kind of make a lot of the country uninhabitable or difficult to cultivate. Although 40% of the land is covered in forests, less than 20% of the land is arable. And for the record, yes, The Sound of Music was filmed in parts of Austria. No, not everybody has seen or even cared about seeing that movie. Of course, the mighty Danube River flows through the northern part of the country and has historically played a vital role in Austria's economy and trade sector, especially after the construction of the Rhine-Main-Danube River Canal back in 1992, which allows ships to finally pass from the North Sea through Europe into the Balkans and ending into the Black Sea. The low-lying areas of eastern Austria have nice grassy hills and plains, perfect for cattle raising and of course dairy production, where some of the classiest Austrian cheeses are produced. Now of course Austria's economy is not really that heavily based on agriculture, but rather services and industry, specifically in engine and medication manufacturing. But who does all the manufacturing? Let's find out in demographics.
So the Danube running through there, running through the upper portion of the country, only 20% being air, so you can only cultivate 20% of the country, right? I'm sure, especially back before modern conveniences and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure it probably plays a part these days as well, as far as, importing and exporting goods and trade and everything like that. But back before, modern times and everything, I'm pretty sure that probably was a lifesaver for getting grains and other goods that are edible and things of that nature. I'm sure that's, yeah. I mean, 3/4 of your country being taken up by mountains, and you can only cultivate 20%. That's kind of rough. Of course, and again, depending on what the actual population country is, could mitigate some of that, but still, only 20%. That's not a lot of land to take and actually feed your population off of. So,
as the home country of Mozart, Austria still kind of lives up to its classy expectation. Austria has a population of about 8.5 million, about 90% of whom are ethnically Austrian, and 10% from other nations, mostly from Germany and the former Yugoslavian states such as Hungary, Serbia, and Bosnia, with an influx of Turkish people having immigrated over the past few decades. The reason why there are so many Eastern Europeans in Austria has somewhat to do with the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Habsburg dynasty, which was one of the most pivotal monarchies that shaped the entire course of European history in every corner, from Spain to France, England to Russia, and so on. The Habsburgs even took over Mexico for a short period of time. That's how powerful these people were. Yes, Austrians speak German, however, rule number one, do not call them German. They're kind of reluctant to even tell you that they speak German, and will be very quick to point out that it's Austrian German, not German German. The language has a very distinct vocabulary, a lot of the words influenced from Eastern European nation words, and they also have their own standard dictionary set apart from the German and Swiss dictionaries. The dialects can change drastically in Austria. Sometimes it only takes about 40 kilometers traveling inward until you reach an area that has a completely different accent. And don't even get started on those Liechtensteiners. In contrast to Germans, Austrians like to define themselves as more soft-spoken and
that's what I would love to take and hear some of the, number one, I might take a look at more of the, not only as far as German is concerned, or like Austrian German and stuff like that, but like French and like language is fascinating to me. How you communicate and the different dialectal differences you can get within a country's borders. The accents that you can get, and even the changing and the slang and the different names that countries regions of countries have for things that be known as something completely different in another part of the same country. To me, it's just the etymology of things, number one, fascinates me, where words originate, but also the way that the words are spoken. At some point in time, I do need to sit down and start learning some different languages other than English. And I would love to take and hear like the accental differences from not only Germany, German, but some of the Austrian German and the different, like, just the fact that, again, yeah, let the video play.
Reserved. They don't like to upset anybody, and courtesy is very highly expected in this country. Educational accomplishments and achievements are very highly prized in Austria. One thing Austrians do kind of obsess over, though, are titles. They prefer to be addressed by every title that they've obtained for themselves, even if it equates to like 15 titles. Mr., Dr., Chairman, Vice CEO, Chairman Otto von Schnitzelbach-Krakengeschäftmeier. One thing that Austrians will tell you that they really like to do is just taking simple walks, whether it's just for an hour to clear their head, and in any weather, whether it's great or whether it's raining. They even have a word for it, spazieren gehen. Don't be surprised if an Austrian invites you to just go for a walk. Go with it. They're a little bit more conservative in their politics,
nice,
which can possibly be attributed to the growing elderly population. However, the youth have always been known to ruffle up a few controversy feathers here and there. I mean, the winner of last year's Eurovision contest was an Austrian drag queen with a beard. They keep things a little bit on the down low. However, once every so often, one notable figure comes and shines through, like Christopher Waltz and everyone's favorite bodybuilder Arnold Schwarzenegger, which, by the way, contrary to some stupid rumors, no, the last name Schwarzenegger does not have a racist connotation behind it. It literally just means the person from Schwarzen. Schwarzen meaning black, Egger meaning soil, black soil, fertile soil. It basically just means the place of the fertile soil. The family is descended from a long line of prosperous farmers, which is what the name refers to. Case closed! Speaking of relationships, let's talk about the...
Again, etymology right there with Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of the, the probably most prominently known person from Austria, especially here, if you in probably the world over, but the fact that the etymology of the last name, that's pretty cool.
Friend zone. In the simplest way I can put this is kind of what Austria's relationships kind of look like. Now shut up and dance with me! Pretty much all of Austria's best friends have some kind of a love-hate relationship with them, but love always wins in the end. It's kind of crazy too, because in the nicest, softest way I can put this, Austria did kind of start or influence both world wars. World War I with the attacks from the Empire on Serbia after the Archduke was assassinated, and World War II because, well, I mean, Hitler was kind of born in Austria. I mean, no Austria, no Hitler. To this day, Austria is incredibly neutral in their affairs and lies in a very interesting alliance limbo, as they have neither joined NATO or the Warsaw Pact. But enough on that.
That's very interesting. Not join NATO or... That's got to be pretty... I mean, granted, it gives you freedom to deal with who you want to and things of that nature, but at the same point in time, maybe some of the benefits that could come from either... That's okay. Interesting.
In regards to their eastern neighbors, because of the whole Austro-Hungarian Empire, Austria and many of the other Central and Balkan states like the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Serbia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and so on, have close ties to Austria, even though historically they had lots of drama under the Habsburg dynasty. But hey, it was either the Habsburgs or the Ottomans, and they hated the Ottomans. In regards to Italy, Italy has always been a huge trade partner, but of course, like mentioned before, the whole South Tyrol region thing kind of causes a little bit of tension. They aren't going to war or anything, but Austria is kind of like, look, Italy, I mean, come on. Everybody there is Austrian. In terms of their best friends, Austria would kind of reluctantly say Germany, but more specifically Bavaria, the region of South Germany. Bavarians and Austrians are very similar in their culture and tradition. Some Austrians will tell you that because they get along so well, Bavaria is said to be the 10th Bundesland, or state, of Austria, although Bavaria alone has more inhabitants than the whole of Austria. You know all that stereotypical Lederhosen and Dirndl costume stuff that you see on all those Oktoberfest commercials? Yeah, that's kind of what you would attribute to Bavarian and somewhat Austrian culture, but they only do that on special occasions. I mean, if it was up to me, I would wear that stuff 24/7, but hey, to each his own. In conclusion, Austria is kind of like the country that secretly changed the entire course of all of European history right under our noses without us even knowing about it. Here's one more picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and get ready because Azerbaijan is coming up next.
Yeah, with the Habsburgs, you kind of do forget how much weight Austria and Austrians have had throughout history. And not only that, like you hear about Germany and France and Italy and Spain and Portugal and Poland and everywhere else other than Austria whenever it comes to anything that's happening these days. And the fact that they're not part of NATO or like the Warsaw Pact or anything like that, it's probably one, it probably lends itself to one of the reasons why you don't hear so much about them. At least we don't here in the US. We hear about everywhere else. You have to basically look up Austria, whether it be in a history book or like on YouTube, as I've done here. Very interesting. We are going to be looking at more countries going forward. I love learning about new places. We're going to probably look at some more stuff on Austria. Yeah, that being said, I'd love to take a dive into the Habsburgs as well, because that would be fascinating. Just all the stuff that sprung off, from the Habsburgs, because their power was pretty far reaching. That being said, y'all be good to each other. Love yourselves. Peace.